Hey yins guys, this is the Jay from the What's Real podcast for our official sponsor of the What's Real Summer Vacation Specials Parts 1 and 2, Churchill Pictures. Churchill Pictures is a Pittsburgh-based film production company founded by Damiano Fusca and Jared Bajoris. Check out churchillpictures.com for all kinds of information about the company and their work. The website contains dozens of videos including short films, movie previews, comedy sketches, the entire documentary UCW, The Greatest Show You Never Saw, exclusive independent pro wrestling matches, links to view or purchase their 2 feature films, Deference and The Unsung, the entire history of the What's Real podcast, the Film City podcast, and so much more. Check out churchillpictures.com today and also check out the official Churchill Pictures YouTube channel. Search for Churchill Pictures and please subscribe. Also follow Churchill Pictures on all social media, including Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Churchill Pictures. Picture the possibilities.
It's a 5-star podcast.
Because we do it.
What's real? Hello, everybody. It is once again that time for summer vacation. And here at the What's Real podcast, we are not leaving you out. So welcome to part 1 of the What's Real Summer Vacation Special, aka me and the Jays' top 10 favorite SummerSlam matches of all time. So first up, as you know, I'm your host, Ed Demko here, along with my tag team championship partner in podcasting, the Jay himself. What's going on, the Jay?
Nice and pumped up for the summer vacation special. Hey, EO, doing things a little different here in the What's Real world for our peeps, but always throwing out that content. And here at part 1 of the summer vacation special, I'm as pumped as ever, even though I'm inside here in the What's Real Studios, at the J compound. I still have baby oil all over me. Hey, EO, for this special.
And that's super appropriate because little do these people realize you're doing a Rick Rude right now. As you record this, you are at your house in the What's Real studio, but you're also somewhere off in the sandy beaches of Florida, looking for Florida Man, should I say. So good luck in your quest there, and be safe because Florida Man's a motherfucker. Okay, just so you know that.
I have a hand-drawn picture of Ed's girlfriend Shauna on my buttocks as well.
Okay, so we're ready to go. Okay. And so should we just jump right into it, the Jay? So we decided that, we could have did a different array of things here. King of the Ring, we batted around because that was a show that obviously happened exactly this time of year. But we're going for SummerSlam. It's still a continuing pay-per-view. There's a much bigger body of work than King of the Ring, which hasn't been a pay-per-view in a really long time. So we decided to go with SummerSlam. So we're going to tell you both our top 10 favorite SummerSlam matches of all time. It's the WrestleMania of the summer, if you will. And if you're not a wrestling fan, you're probably not listening. So if you are a wrestling fan, you know the deal with SummerSlam. So let's just get into it, the Jay, starting off at number 10. What's your 10th favorite match in SummerSlam history, the Jay?
So as I always disclaimer, my list is more or less a countdown than a ranking system.
Yeah.
Because it gets so opinionated, and, I get when people do that. It's like, but the Jay, like I just have too expansive of opinions and the way my mind works to say this is my favorite SummerSlam match of all time. But just wanted to say that's kind of how I put this list together. I'm starting this off with number 10, with one of my favorite SummerSlams. There was that period there where it was SummerSlam of 02 and 03 back to back.
Okay.
That stood out. Like they brought the heat with those 2 SummerSlams back to back years. Like, literally. And just as far as the overall cards that we talk about really liking, where every match slot brings something different to the table and was really good. And it just puts together like an overall good show. It's like the comparison of those great albums that we talk about where you can listen to the whole album
front
from
to back,
the first song to the last song.
Yep.
Exactly. So all that said and done, let's start the list. And I'm throwing at you from SummerSlam 2002. It's actually the pay-per-view's opener, Pittsburgh's own Kurt Angle versus Rey Mysterio for the first time.
Dude, I really like that match. And here's the funny thing. So I went through my entire list. Like I had a big ass list of matches to pick from. And I was kind of surprised when I finished it off. It didn't make my list. But it's definitely like honorable mention for sure, because I do like that match. It's a really interesting matchup. And dude, I thought this was kind of cool too. So as you guys may listen and know, we're from Pittsburgh. And one of the bigger shows that happens throughout the year is a show called Steel City Con. It's a convention like comic books, toys, celebrities, whatever. But Kurt Angle is apparently going to be the guest at the next one, which I'm not exactly sure when that was. But, that might be one that I have to go to, because I wouldn't mind meeting Angle, and I probably have some really cool shit for him to sign. So that's a maybe so far. We'll see.
Yeah, that's awesome. As you know, with Churchill Pictures, we can kind of reveal it now here on the podcast. So those sticking with us listening to the special, as Ed said, I'm sure anybody listening to the part one of the special here, with it being a pro wrestling based with the SummerSlam talk, are all in the know. But at Churchill Pictures, one of our future film projects, Kurt Angle agreed to be a part of. So I've been in talks with him, and he's a really cool guy. And I haven't met him in person yet, but I am counting down the day. And there is a chance too, just to join you. Hey, if everything works out, that I'd be down to go with you to that.
It'd be really cool to meet Angle, and I'd be thrilled to meet him. And he's definitely going to show up on my list here for sure, the Jay. But I was really surprised that match didn't make mine. So instead, for me at number 10, this is a match from 2013 that not only was a great match, but it also had a really cool storyline and everything surrounding it. And I'm going with Daniel Bryan versus John Cena. Really good match, really good feud. That's when they were doing the thing at the time where like Triple H and them were trying to screw Daniel Bryan, but Cena was like, no, I'm actually going to give you a shot because you deserve it. So like Cena like superseded the authority and kind of had the match made. And of course, Daniel Bryan would go on to win that match and win the title. And he would go on to lose immediately. I believe that year was to Randy Orton, who cashed in Money in the Bank. It was to somebody that cashed in on him. But yeah, he would end up losing that, which was ridiculous because they just had this really, really good matchup.
Yeah, John Cena always had the reputation to really step it up at SummerSlam. He's actually had a lot.
I agree.
I went through a lot of Cena's stuff to put various ones on this list, because he's had so many classics at SummerSlam. And this was definitely one I pondered. It's a great match. It's the one where Triple H was the guest referee. Like you said, after the match, Orton came down and Trips like helped him out and stuff. So yeah, that storyline. But this was like at the height of Daniel Bryan, his rise and kind of breaking into the main event picture in WWE and stuff. So this was definitely a classic. And, the in-ring action between Cena and Bryan at this time too was incredible.
And dude, it's how's this for surprising? And another surprise for my list. That's the last time that John Cena shows up on this list.
Oh wow.
So that's kind of surprising, but it'll make sense in the long run. So,
gotcha.
But yeah, that's number 10. So what do you got coming in at number 9, the Jay?
Well, I'll throw this in here because it will work out perfectly, actually, because of your choice with starting your list with Daniel Bryan and John Cena from SummerSlam 13, because this stuck out to me where SummerSlam 13 had pretty much one of the best double main events ever. And that is my number 9 from SummerSlam 13 is the other half of that from Ed's pick. And that was the Brock Lesnar versus CM Punk match from that year. Do you remember that match?
Yeah, it's actually an honorable mention on here.
Okay, yeah.
A really good match. It's one of those matches too where like at the time, if you remember, they were like feeding people to Lesnar. And we were kind of worried about it going into this time period. Like, what are they going to do with Punk? But like, no, that's the most anyone was really getting in on that era. Brock Lesnar, because I want to say shortly before that, that's when he like beat the shit out of Cena.
Yep.
So there you go. That's it's a crazy time period. Even to look back to just think how they had Lesnar running through a lot of people when he would wrestle, but not Punk, and that's a really good match. So I definitely I'd see why it would get on your list.
The storyline had Heyman turning on Punk. as going back with Lesnar
Yeah.
at the time. And this is another
Yep.
aspect of this, with us again, back to back here, placing these big matches from SummerSlam 13, that this is around 8 years ago. It's
That's
just
crazy
so weird.
to think about.
Yeah. Crazy.
It really, well, and it shows you too how the eras flip, like in a moment.
Right.
You know what I
Yep.
mean? Especially with like, somebody like a Braun Strowman recently being like a main eventer, and he's gone now. Like, so that's even gonna make some of this stuff like age quicker than it probably would have or should have otherwise.
Yeah, without big changes. Yep.
Yeah, like, and we've seen that through the years. You know what I mean? Like with like whenever they lost Stone Cold and The Rock pretty much in a short period of time, and then Brock left, and then Goldberg would leave, and like, just it's losing main people or a lot of them in a short period of time always completely changed the landscape of the company. So it's pretty wild, man, how that works. For me at number 9, this is really weird too, because I can't say this throughout the history of SummerSlam very often, but this was a SummerSlam that I completely missed when it happened. I was doing something in my life where I was just, wrestling was not a concern of mine as much at that point. It's probably the only time I remember really not being into wrestling really at all, for like a year or so, or at least a year, I want to say. But I went back since and watched this match, and it's an amazing match. And I'm going to go back to SummerSlam 2008 for Undertaker and Edge Hell in a Cell. Unbelievable match.
Yep. That's a classic. We talked about that on a prior list. I think that was one of, we did a rundown of Dave Meltzer's top Undertaker pay-per-view matches. And that one, one was on there, and we discussed like, we both got to relive that because it has been a while since I've seen that. But that's a great call. That match is epic.
And it's been a while since I've seen it, even putting this list together, and it kind of reminded me, like, I need to go and grab that for sure, and take a look. So, number 8, the J. What do you got coming in here, brother?
So we're gonna go a little bit old school here, at the rise of two of the WWF at the time's top mid card guys breaking into the main event picture. And that is going back to MSG Madison Square Garden at SummerSlam 1998 with the WWF Intercontinental ladder match between Triple H and Rock.
Dude, at number 8, that's where you have that? Yeah, great minds think alike, brother. So ding, ding, do I.
Yeah, we always love this one.
If you remember, I would say, like, I know he was around for years, but like, that was the first match I remember Triple H having where it was like, okay, now this dude's finally living up to his reputation in the business, in the ring, for really like kind of the first time. Like, I mean, I'm not saying he had bad matches, but he was around for probably 2-3 years before that. He's seen his character go through a lot of changes. But that was when he was definitely on a stride. Like, he was starting to really improve in leaps and bounds in short periods of time. And same thing for The Rock, man. Like, say what you will about his career, but like, maybe the most important year of his career was 1998. You know what I mean? Like, that's when really he started hitting the pinnacle as a main eventer. He would win the title. He was just like a major factor in that. But how funny is that this is 98, and we're talking August, and they're both battling it out for the Intercontinental.
Yeah. And the thing with this match, too, with the particular matchup, and I remember us as teenage fans even talking about this, where, the first famous ladder match with Shawn Michaels and Razor, and then, of course, the rematch, you have Michaels involved and his athleticism and stuff. And Razor's a huge guy, but again, with Michaels in there, this one with Triple H and The Rock, I remember us saying, like, dude, it's two huge guys that are like heavyweights in a ladder match. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. And they proved that they could pull it off with their certain specific type of athleticism. And this was a really good ladder match.
And dude, that was also an era where like the fans at Madison Square Garden were not fucking around. Like, because that's, you have to remember too, that's the same building that Michaels and Razor main evented at WrestleMania. Or not main evented, I'm sorry. The ladder match from WrestleMania 10 was there. And it was such a big deal that, like, you can't go into Madison Square Garden and have, like, a mediocre ladder match.
Exactly.
Like, it's not going to work. The fans are going to shit all over it. And this is one that I always remember, too. It was during a really high period and hot period in wrestling in 98. This place was, like, buzzing for this match. That was a great era, especially for going to MSG for them. So... yeah, so funny how that works. The Jay, great minds think alike on that.
If you remember too, that's like just another little tidbit. This is one of the ones in Michael's later in the show, I think, but definitely Hunter here gets played live and in person by the band that did the DX music, that goofy redheaded dude.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Triple H puts him on his shoulders and he's still singing, and it kind of gets awkward, but it always stood out to me. And it's those little weird things that you remember, you know?
Yeah, because I the first thing whenever you said that is like, wow, I don't remember that, because, like, there's not really anywhere for them to play. Like, I've seen them play at other places. Like, there's that, WrestleMania 14?
Yeah, 14 in Philly. They played Michaels Down. That's what I was thinking of.
And there's the room for them to do that. In MSG, there's really no extra space in that building at all in the fans. Like, that's not how that building is.
Yeah, that's why they were in the ring.
So, yeah, they always feel like they don't have enough room at MSG. It's so weird. But I guess that shows you why. So, all right, the Jay. So we're floating right along here, brother. What do you got at number 7?
Loving it. Hey, I love the trip down professional wrestling nostalgia lane for sure. And speaking of which, I am going even a little more old school, dialing the hands of time back a bit more, from SummerSlam 98. And I'm heading to one of ours' childhood's classics, SummerSlam 91, Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect.
Okay. I actually have this match on my list a little bit later on. But yeah, I mean, it has to go on there, right? It's definitely, it might be the most, would you consider that to be Bret Hart's most important match of his career? Or do you think minus the screw job, if that's the one that you consider to be one?
I would say this. I would say this one, because it is definitely what propelled him to, probably even Vince to like the acknowledgement that Bret would be a great world champion. Because as we always say in the WWE, the Intercontinental Championship is kind of the test run for a possible world championship push. And that's where Bret and Perfect were at the time. And you didn't get matches like this, typically. You always go back to Randy Savage and Steamboat at WrestleMania 3 and those kind of technical masterpieces. So in SummerSlam 91 here for the IC, Bret and Perfect, they put on one of those type of shows that's just... it always stood out to me as a kid, just seeing that for the first time and just being in awe. I always go back to it's what really made me obsessed in professional wrestling to eventually try to pursue it, because the athleticism aspect of it was so entrancing to me as also an athlete, especially at the time playing a bunch of active sports. Dude, then,
this might be, it's this time period, I want to say, because I know that Bret and Perfect had a lot to do with this for me, but they were two of the first guys, and I didn't realize it till this time, but I was always like this. They were like, that time period with them wrestling and stuff. That's when I started to first realize that that's the kind of wrestler that was like my favorite, like the athletic guy,
exactly.
The guys that can have really good athletic matches, because like even at the time, like when it was probably this match or this feud or something that got me thinking about it at the time as a kid, where I was like, yeah, like I like these guys, and I like Macho Man, and I like Ricky Steamboat, and I like Ric Flair, and I like Sting, and I like, like at the time guys that were active. And it's like, yeah, I guess all my favorites are kind of like that. Like none of my favorites are like Andre the Giant or, like the big, Yokozuna or something. Like it was always the athletic dudes. So yeah, they probably had more to do with that than almost anybody, at least for making me realize that as a kid, that's kind of what I liked out of my pro wrestling.
Yeah, and it was I think an age thing too. Like when you're a younger kid watching professional wrestling at that time, the over the top characters like Warrior Hogan are like real life superheroes, and it just fits into that kind of child psyche that those are your favorite guys. And then when you get a little bit older, and again, kind of picking up on how they're putting together matches and the art form and that athleticism of it, then the guys that we're talking about now, like the Bret Harts, Perfects, and Shawn Michaels, kind of you realize that that's the kind of wrestling that you like the most. You even throw in, all the WCW guys that are that kind of size, like Eddie and even Benoit.
Or even like a Pillman, if you want to go early 90s.
Yep. So yeah, I'm
those were guys that were kind of breaking that mold at the time. Instead of like big giant hoss wrestling and stuff, you had a lot of the more athletic, quick guys, but you realized that there was a difference in the match quality that you were watching. So, and it was just more exciting. You know what I mean? You could even see the crowds kind of, they might not care about the two guys when a match gets started, but they start getting on a roll and the crowd gets into it. And that's, to me, one of my favorite things about pro wrestling, because when you're at a show when that happens, it's obviously better. But even when you're watching it on TV and you start to, it's like, oh, dude, these two they got something going on here. Like, it's just a neat thing about pro wrestling. And as a fan, it's one of my favorite things.
Right with you.
So moving along here to number 7 for me, I'm going to stay in 1998, actually. And I'm going to go with another match from that SummerSlam. And it's one that people, I think, tend to forget about. But I'm going to go, and it's the opener. And it is Triple H versus Mankind in a steel cage. Really good match.
Call.
I remember they kind of build it up where Mankind was saying that, like, he was kind of talking as Mick Foley, but he was still Mankind. But he was talking about how he was at Madison Square Garden when he saw Jimmy Snuka jump off the cage. And, of course, in the match, he does the elbow drop from the top of the cage. And, that's it. It was a really good feud, too, at the time. They've been feuding over the course of the summer. And, they even did the shit where Foley got Chyna hit him with the door.
Yeah.
The cage
and
door.
Of course, Foley just takes the old school blue steel cage that even, like, Hogan would say. Like, that's why they ended up changing it, because it was, like, unforgiving to high hell. And, of course, Foley's ass just takes that from Chyna, who's on Mexican supplements at the time.
Takes it right in the face, and not only does he finish the match, but he wins the match. So, and dude, that's what, almost a year before King of the Ring 98. So, like, Foley was doing a lot of wild shit even then.
Of course,
you know what I mean?
always.
Like, he was on the map for that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, man, I always really liked that match. I thought it was like, it's weird because him and Triple H have feuded several times in their careers. And that was the end match to that feud, I believe. That was like the blow-off to it. And how funny is it that they would be feuding 3 years later at like Royal Rumble 2000, where Foley would basically end his career, other than like the stalled comebacks with a Hell in a Cell with Trips.
Yeah, they had that chemistry.
Yeah, they were good together, man, for sure. So I guess I could start off number 6 here, the J. I had Bret and Perfect from SummerSlam 91. As you said, really great match. There's not much that you can really add to it that we said. But I did think about this in bringing this match up, because we didn't talk about it previously. And obviously these two don't have a ton of matches together, but the two most famous ones are probably this one, and of course the one from King of the Ring 1993. Another really good match. My question to you is, the J, which one's better?
That's a very tough one. The King of the Ring 93 is another one of those overall cards that we talked about on the outset.
That's one of my favorite pay-per-views.
It's so good because Bret runs the gamut against a varying really good opponents for him, and it just works out so well. And so that kind of history within it would maybe have me go with that one, but then the original in 91 is the original, so I kind of have to have that be my deciding factor, is that the 91 one is the first one, so I would lean towards that one.
See, I think the King of the Ring one is better. I remember years and years and years ago, as you know, I was an avid wrestling tape trader for years, but there was a time period, and I forget what this was. It might even have been during the time, because, like, remember how I used to just put together comps for you guys? Like, I made you the Michaels one.
Oh, yeah.
I made a couple other ones for a couple other buddies of mine. But I would try and keep in mind like what you guys liked and what I knew you liked or whatever. But I remember, and I don't remember who this was, I made somebody a tape and I just called it the best tape ever.
Yeah.
And I believe I put this and the King of the Ring matches back to back. Because I'm like, oh, that's cool. Just watch them back to back. They're both really good matches. So that was like one time I remember being like, all right, I'm going to sit down and watch these critically and see which one I think is the best. And I think the King of the Ring 93 one is better. And I'll tell you why. Because this one was a build-out feud. Like, Perfect was on his run as the Intercontinental Champion, and Brett, would go on to beat him. But the one in King of the Ring was different because Brett was making his surge through the tournament. They were both baby faces. So they kind of had to work like as dicks to each other. But Perfect turns more heel. He does it in the match, but then he also does like the handshake thing at the end of the match to kind of like fuck off his heat and give it to Brett. And I thought that was really cool. But he is like, okay, so at that King of the Ring, Brett fights Razor in the first round, Perfect, and then he fights Bam Bam in the final. That to me is an amazing array because he has to beat the big dude, like the big jacked up bruiser guy. Then he has to beat the wrestler. Then he has to beat Bam Bam, a 300 plus pound anomaly. Because there was nobody really quite like Bam Bam ever, even to this day. And Perfect being in the middle of that it's perfect, pun intended.
Yeah.
It just worked out. It was already a rivalry previously. They cut that awesome fucking promo together before their match where it's like, your dad never beat my dad. Like, it's really funny and really good. And then they go out and have that match. It's amazing. So that's why I wanted to kind of throw that on my list at number 6. But what do you got at number 6?
Yeah, I'll actually have to do that. Watch those back to back coming up. I'm making a note of it. It's been a while.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
It's pretty fun to do. Like you'll see because they kind of play back a lot of stuff from that match. Like if you're a big fan of the SummerSlam match, the King of the Ring match, they add a little bit to that story. So it's pretty neat how they do it.
Yeah, I do remember that. So yeah, the J with number 6 here on our list. Hey, Eel, as you said, man, talk about chemistry. You and I's chemistry, man, because you were just talking about the pick before this one with the Blue Cage and Mankind and Trips. Well, the J's number 6 is the Blue Cage again from SummerSlam 94 for the WWF title, Bret Hart versus Owen Hart in the cage.
That's a really good choice, man. I mean, I can't really argue with that. It's definitely one of the best SummerSlam matches, I think, of all time. It does show up on my list here for sure. And you know what's crazy, dude? There's a lot of people that don't even like that match.
Do you remember the
run
runtime?
Isn't it like 32 minutes?
32 minutes, which I think is just perfect for those two in a cage for 32 minutes. I mean, come on.
And dude, the only reason I know that is because of tape trading. That was like a prominent, because I definitely
that's a great call because I have that in front of me with a reference. You just pulled that out of your ass, so that's impressive. It's
weird how stuff like that sticks to you, dude.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a really good choice, man. I can't really argue with it. It's that feud it's definitely one of my favorite feuds of all time, and I think it's aged amazingly. Where a lot of really good feuds back then didn't. I mean, when you go back, they kind of surprise you with the stuff that they pull out in all those matches. It's because him and Brett just have chemistry that you just can't have with a lot of people.
And it just goes into such good storytelling because they're real life brothers and everybody knows it. And that kind of was like the whole crescendo of the match because they're climbing the cage and they get to the outside and Owen's leg gets hooked into it. And like Brett rams him into the cage and Owen goes upside down hanging by his leg. And then Brett just drops down to retain the belt. It was like unreal.
See, that's what I miss about Owen, because I don't know if you remember this or not, but dude, Owen used to like do these over the top things like when he was losing something. Like he could have lost that match in a bunch of different ways, but instead he ends up losing it with his foot caught and he's hanging upside down on the outside of the cage. Like it's a pretty wild way of losing a match. And that's definitely a calling card that I think Owen had.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Without a doubt, man. So can't argue on that one, the J. So we are going to go, for me, for number 5. Okay. hit us with your 5, the Jay.
All right, we're at the halfway point, Hale. Perfect running time here on the pod, and this is a blast, dude. So number 5. For this one, I'm going with a match that always stood out to me. This is the second time I'm going to have this dude on the list, and I have to get the other dude on the list for sure. And this is the WWF title match from SummerSlam 2001, Kurt Angle versus Steve Austin.
Okay. I like this match. I don't think it's their best match. Dude, there's something weird about Austin when it comes to SummerSlam.
That's a good point.
Like because dude, that guy. This will never get out of my mind. And not to change the subject, but remember that goddamn Undertaker and Austin match from SummerSlam '98 with the Highway to Hell music?
Of course, I always remember the leg drop through the announce table from Taker because that bump was amazing. Yeah, but he does say in that match,
but the match sucks.
He has a concussion, though, so that's what throws it off. He has he's like legit out. Taker.
Of course, that would happen.
Yeah.
It's that's the only reason why I didn't put that there. For some reason, Austin. Well, and I don't think I need to bring up what happens at SummerSlam '97 with Stone Cold, do I?
Yeah, not at all.
So yeah, it's weird. Like that one didn't make my list. So this is where the first time we're having like an actual discrepancy here.
Well, of sorts. Another aspect to it that I know you weren't big into at the time. I was into it a little more because everybody always shits on the invasion angle and thinks that the WWF flubbed it. I don't think they hit a home run by any means, but I think I like that a bit more than a lot of people. And this was the middle of Austin's run as the top heel after he did turn on the WWF during the invasion storyline.
Yeah. So is this when he's doing a lot of the comedy shit with Angle?
No, it was like before that. It was like when he was like full on heel Austin. From what I remember, I believe this is where he had the infamous Disturbed band remix of his music.
Oh yeah, I hated that.
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. Because other than that, the match is unbelievable.
Okay, it's been a while since I've watched it, so that could be a miscalculation. But dude, with the 5 matches I have left, I find it very difficult to remove any of these. So, all right, man. Number 5 for me. This is from 2003. And these two, you want to talk about chemistry, these two maybe have the best chemistry in wrestling history if you really want to get into it. But I'm going with Brock Lesnar versus Kurt Angle. I don't see a bad match between these guys. Like, I can't recall any.
No.
They had the Iron Man on SmackDown, and, they had several, their WrestleMania match, of course, from WrestleMania 19. But yeah, this is just another really good match, man. And you start to realize, dude, it's crazy. Like, I know Brock is still good. Like, he can have good matches and shit. But baby Brock, before he wore, like, the MMA tights and had the fucking sword tattoo, that dude was just, like, if he could have stayed that dude forever, he might be the greatest professional wrestler that's ever lived.
Yeah, I mean, he is, in that state, truly Vince McMahon's wet dream. I mean, that's like Vince McMahon's prototype pro wrestler come to life, because he was like the first one. We just mentioned it. It can go right in with that. When I was referencing being a kid and looking at guys like Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior that are these larger than life cartoon characters, Brock was like a gritty, real version. He was like the real wrestler, especially later on in his career when he went and won the UFC championship and came back to pro wrestling. Like, he is the prototype WWE wrestler just from looks, but then also the real life aspect. And that's, I think there's just been nobody, and probably nobody else ever, that's going to be like Brock, especially as you're mentioning, Brock in his absolute prime.
Well, dude, I mean, think about this. Brock came in as like this green ass rookie dude that looked like $1 million. And I remember at first we were all kind of like, I don't know. And then he won us over pretty quickly. I want to say by that, and dude, this is pretty wild, because I'll just bring this up because it didn't make my list. Maybe it's on yours. Rock versus Brock at SummerSlam, which is a really good match.
I always like that, yeah, but it's not on mine.
It's okay, so it didn't make my list. So I feel like once Brock hit that, like up to that time period, that's when we were like, oh shit, this dude is money. And he was good, and he could go. And from that point until he was pretty much gone the first time, that run is just fucking phenomenal, man. He was something else, like a completely different thing. And dude, up to that point, we were watching wrestling for a really long time, and he was like an anomaly even to us.
Yeah.
Like, I thought this dude was gonna suck, but he's like fucking Angle. Like, not as good as Angle, but like he can go like Angle, and he looks like $1 billion.
I always bring up, I saw live and in person when I was attending Penn State in college. They came to the Bryce Jordan Center for a Raw. And when they were first introducing Brock into the WWF, he was doing a lot of just run-ins, just like, fucking people up. And at the Bryce Jordan Center at State College this one time when they were building him up, it was after a Rikishi match. Rikishi went over, he was doing his dance, and Brock came down and F5'd him. I saw him F5 Rikishi in person, and I'll just never forget that. It was insane. Like the smoothness, crispness that he did that, for those that aren't familiar, Rikishi's a huge man, probably weighs close to 400 pounds, I would say at that time, possibly.
Yeah, definitely.
And Brock just gave him his F5 finisher, which he scoops you up on his shoulders and basically throws your ass. And I saw that live and was just like, okay, this dude is going to be a barn burner.
Well, dude, you might agree with me on this. Let me see. So, growing up watching wrestling, especially in the 80s and shit, we saw a lot of strongman wrestlers, like some of the biggest dudes of all time. Even Andre, guys like that, right? So, like, you always had these dudes, and by the time that, let's say, like, 98-ish, okay, you were more than used to these kind of guys. Like, you've seen them come and go for years. And there were a lot of different ones and a lot of varying ones, but like you'd see them try and do these impressive feats of strength. And they can all do crazy shit, but you've seen each and every one of them kind of like meet their fill. And by that, I'm talking about like you've seen Hogan do all kinds of crazy shit, but like when he slams Andre, doesn't really slam Andre. Lex Luger, huge dude, seen him do a bunch of feats of strength, but when he slammed Yoko, barely slammed Yoko. Like, these dudes had their limits, right? But then come 98, and you see Bill Goldberg. He was maybe the first dude that was like, I've not seen this dude struggle to pick anyone up under any circumstance.
That's a great breakdown.
And then Brock came, and it was like, I have not seen this dude struggle one bit to pick up anybody in any circumstance. They were like the first two dudes built from that mold of like the big giant strong man. And I'm like, I never seen them actually get pushed to their limit. Maybe Goldberg when he was older, and maybe Lesnar when he was like, older through the diverticulitis stuff and everything. But like those first run Goldbergs and Brocks, there's never been a dude. Dude, they would have been picking Andre up like that if he could get, do the working style thing. There wasn't a guy in the business that they wouldn't be able to get up.
Yeah, that's a great breakdown. And maybe like a honorable mention to Cena. Give Cena his credit with his F.
Yeah, Cena's impressive.
Picking up Big Show, picking up two dudes at once. It's pretty crazy.
Cena's biggest issue in that regard was never his strength. It was just his size.
Yeah.
Like if he was 6'9", yeah, he'd pick up anybody. He'd be just like the dudes we're talking about.
Right.
So, but you're right. Absolutely 110%. So, all right. Where are we at? The J number 4?
Number 4 had to...
go
ahead.
I was going to say, let me just get mine out of the way because it's already been mentioned. I went with Owen versus Brett, SummerSlam 94 cage. Fucking love that match. Love that feud. We kind of hit on it already. So I will pass it over to you for number 4, the J.
More Brett on my list, Hayed. I just had to get this on somewhere. We talked about it last week on the What's Real podcast when we were breaking down the A&E biography on Brett. And that, of course, is the main event for the Intercontinental Championship of SummerSlam 92, Wembley Stadium in London. Bret the Hitman Hart defending the IC title against his brother-in-law, the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith.
Well, first off, let me just say this, the J. I'm surprised that this match is already on your list. I thought it would have been a little bit higher.
Yeah, like I said, it's tough to put them in specific ranking order. It's kind of, now the top 5's kind of just like, these are all just top matches for me.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you can't really argue with that match. I think without a doubt, it's probably, let me hit you with this then. Actually, no, I'll hold off. But yeah, I mean, dude, and a lot of that is due to Brett. Because you've heard the story as well as I have too, where Davey Boy was pretty much gassed out in this match within maybe like the first 5 minutes.
That's what Brett said.
And the running time on this one's a good one. I just remember this sticking out so much, not just because it's a good match, but dude, so this is the main event in August of 1992. You have to remember now, this company may have had its greatest roster it ever had at this time, especially if you always go by the measuring stick of the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, we always say look at the roster of the 30 men in 92 Rumble, and you'll see what their roster was in a nutshell.
And 92 is a pretty unique year because the company was kind of in flux, because you would, through the course of the year, you would have Ric Flair comes into 92, barrel and ass, the man. They decide to kind of move on from that a little bit, not totally, but a little bit. So through the main event scene, or the world title picture scene in 92, you have everybody from Hogan and Flair to Macho Man to
Bulldog, Jake the Snake, Razor.
Razor Ramon, Undertaker, Sid. Warrior would make his return. People like Papa Shango were floating around there. So in SummerSlam of 92, even though it was an Intercontinental title match, it main evented. And the Bret Hart versus Bulldog main event, and that type of athletic contest, like we were talking about a little earlier, that was one of the first times we saw that main eventing a WWF pay-per-view, and it might be the only time that main evented a WWF pay-per-view in kind of like that big guy pre-steroid trial-ish era that they had.
Yeah, and throw in the atmosphere as well, because they hadn't been doing as many stadium shows and things like that, stemming from like WrestleMania, 6. After that, they kind of went back to arenas.
So, dude, you know, always talk about like the wrestling pinnacle in the 80s, like wrestling was huge in the 80s. So if you want to say like from 85 to 87, 88-ish, we'll go into 88. We'll give them that. That's the top of the mountain for that peak. And like the top of the peak, I would say, is like 89, 90, and then 91 is the slope, and 92 is like the last rung on that golden era before they started hitting like the new generation type era, the lean years for the company where they were wrestling at like high school gyms and shit on Raw.
Right.
So that's a pretty pivotal year for the company, and I don't think looking back on it, a lot of people would have thought that that's what we would have gotten in 92.
Nah. But yeah.
With the roster, the whole nine, like, but it's a great match, man. SummerSlam, you can't really argue with it. And that's, that probably, that match probably gave them the confidence for us to get, Davey Boy in many main events throughout the years after that. And obviously Brett, as being a guy that can main event a pay-per-view. So that was clearly still on his path to being a world champion, which would happen, later that year?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a pretty wild transformation. But Brett was always the backbone of that for them. So that's why I feel like you got to give Brett, some credit where a lot of people may not. So, all right, moving right along here, Jay, we're getting into the top 3. And I'm going to go to number 3 on this one. And it's a match that I saw in person. So we're going to 1995, and I'm going with the ladder match between HBK and Razor Ramon. I do think this match is slightly better than the WrestleMania one, which a lot of people would disagree with. They did the stupid idea of like they couldn't use the ladder as a weapon in this one, but they were able to work around it and do a lot of crazy shit. And it's, you know, it's still one of my favorite ladder matches of all time. I mean, Razor Ramon, Shawn Michaels, their chemistry was just completely off the charts. It's almost a shame we didn't get a lot more HBK versus Razor matches that weren't ladder matches.
Right. Yeah. Just think of the pressure in trying to outdo yourselves in one of the most memorable matches of all time, that you're adding this gimmick that was kind of, you know, we always talk about the history of the ladder match, you know, Brett and Sean kind of doing it on some different shows. They're famously on that Coliseum video ladder match.
Oh yeah.
You know, remember that one?
Yep. That was like a trial run.
Yeah, kind of trial run, getting the feel for it and things like that. So when the WrestleMania one happened and just became a legendary match, and they announced the SummerSlam rematch ladder match, it's like, how are we going to top this? And they, like you said, in your opinion, they did. For me, it's just so tough. I think they're just neck and neck. You know, I might do the same thing myself.
They're both different matches.
They're really
very different, even though they're both ladder matches. They're still very different.
And just to throw out a little personal detail, one of my favorite pairs of trunks of Michael's, because he would always have the colorways of just the classic HBK long pant trunks. And at SummerSlam 95, he wore the turquoise blue and black.
A funny story, but I do dabble in wrestling figures, and I started getting back into them. I collected them as a kid. I had the big LJN rubber ones and the little Hasbro ones. Me and the Jay definitely were friends, probably when we were both still collecting those as kids. And then it's gone on to now Mattel. And I'd seen the stuff for years, but I didn't really buy a lot of it, okay? But I specifically remember me and my girlfriend were going to buy, like, birthday presents for her nieces, so we had to go to Toys R Us at the time. So I was looking through stuff, and I'm always like, oh, let me just look at the boys' toys and see what they got. And I saw the wrestling figures, and I was like, oh, man, I haven't looked at wrestling figures in ages. And I see a Shawn Michaels figure with him in his SummerSlam 95 shit.
Sick.
And I was like, I got to get that. Like, that's one of the first figures that I bought that kind of, like, started me off collecting wrestling figures. But it's just, I love that gear, too. I'm a big fan. And just, dude, it was always different anytime he wore anything that didn't have, like, a pink or a red to it, I thought.
Yeah.
Like, I even remember a couple times he wore, like, one of my other favorite ones that he wears is in the match against Jeff Jarrett, where he wears the white and gold.
Yep. Love that.
Like, I like when he, like, went outside the box a little bit with that kind of stuff. I even like, too, because he only wore them when they really first started doing it. Remember his Heartbreak Kid trunks that were his first Heartbreak Kid DX trunks?
Yeah, I showed you. I have the chalk line tank top and shorts that I call it my pool loungewear.
Now, not those. I'm talking about the ones that were like the first. They were just like his Heartbreak Kid trunks that we were used to seeing, but they were black and green and had the DX shit all in the heart. So
he wore those
same
at the DX
pay-per-view
against Shamrock.
Yeah, you're right. That was the first one. So it's like he kept that same Shawn Michaels design, but changed all the Heartbreak Kid shit to DX and completely changed over to the red or the green and the black and white DX colors. Like, that was, I loved when he went outside of the box with that shit. I always like when people do that stuff anyway. It's like, I always got a kick out of Flair's pink robe or his green robe, because it was just different from all his usual stuff. So I totally agree there. That's a good call.
Yep.
So what do you got at number 3, the J?
So number 3, hey, you know what? I had to throw this on here because I loved these matches, and they became, just a thing of like a time capsule, because people would die if they kept trying to overdo it. And it's a classic. So it's the very first ever official TLC match between Edge and Christian, the Hardy Boys, and the Dudleys at SummerSlam 2000.
All I got to say is I can't wait to see the matches that you put above this one, because I thought for sure this was going to be your number 1.
It was tough.
It's very tough. It's an unbelievable match, man. I mean, I could go on, and I probably will as we continue on here. But yeah, I mean, there's absolutely no argument for me putting this on the top favorite 10 list of SummerSlam matches ever. No way.
Yeah, because we were just talking, again, it correlates with breaking down the ladder match rematch between Michaels and Razor and how they're going to outdo it. And this one being the first ever like official, again, TLC, because they had like a ladder match tag team thing before and it evolved into adding the tables and chairs. And you're starting a complete concept that is just going to build from this match.
Yeah, I mean, dude, this was the first one that you had no idea. Like, I mean, you knew kind of. I mean, I guess ECW gave us more than a recollection of what this type of match would entail. But seeing it on a WWE scale was pretty amazing. That was the thing that was really made it stand out, and made it different. Because you're seeing that shit in a big ass arena. Period.
Yeah, and then of course involved are three of the best tag teams, especially in-ring work wise of all time. Edge, Christian, Hardy Boys, and Dudleys, and the chemistry that they had, all six men, all three teams was just something.
And dude, well, think about this. Okay, let me throw something at you here. So we're talking pre-TLC matches. Okay. Our opinion of the Dudleys was probably the same. It was probably like they're here from ECW and we don't really like what they're doing with them. Would you agree with that? Pre-TLC now.
Yeah.
We're talking like when they kind of first went there. It just didn't really seem like the Dudleys fit in very well. And if you would have asked us at the time, I would have probably been like, it's not going to last very long for them and we'll probably see them back in ECW.
Yeah, that'd be a good call.
Now, the Hardys, we liked them. We thought that they were super talented, but I'll be totally honest with you, pre-TLC matches, I'm like, they like these dudes, and these dudes are popular, but they're never really going to do anything with them because they hate their style. I know this company hates what they do.
Yeah.
And Edge and Christian, to me, at the time, I was like, oh, they're the best tag team out of all three of these. Like, they're going to be a tag team probably for a long time. Because they were the WWE created tag team. So it was like, yeah, I could see them being a big deal.
I mean, they had probably, it's tough to say. Like, I was going to say about the chemistry between all the teams. Just with Edge and Christian growing up together, they were like brothers, Then you got the Hardy Boys that are like brothers, and the Dudley Boys that were
because they are brothers
for forever. Yeah. So, but again, yeah, it's just all three bring kind of a uniqueness that just meshed so well, and then you add in the fact that it's like a freaking live stunt show with the spots that they were doing and the bumps they were taking and the risks they were taking, and they pulled everything off. And I just had to get that on here. In the upper part of the list, just because of the respect I have for, the risks they took as well, even.
Okay. So now number 2, the J, I'm going to have one that you already talked about. Bret vs. Bulldog from 1992 SummerSlam. I think we covered that pretty well, but I absolutely love that match. But I was going to say this. Now, here's a question. Let me pose this to you and see what you think. What is a better match, the J? Bret versus Bulldog from SummerSlam 92, or Bret versus Bulldog for the WWF title at In Your House? What the hell was that one?
Yeah, that one's unreal.
Seasons Beatings or something.
Yeah, and that one's unreal due to the blood factor.
Oh, yeah.
That's what kind of stands that one out. Bret bleeds like a pig in that.
Yep.
And, that always just, that's why they do blade jobs, for big matches, because it stands out. So that one, because of that, makes it different than the 92 one, but all the pomp and circumstance surrounding Davey Boy being in his home country, the United Kingdom, a sold out stadium show, I kind of give the edge to that one, even though it's really tough to compare and I wouldn't argue either way.
Now, this is another one that I compared doing tapes back in the day. Same thing as the fucking
Perfect.
Bret and Owen matches.
Bret and Owen.
Perfect. No, Bret and Perfect, you're right. The SummerSlam to King of the Ring. I did the back-to-back comparison with these two. Now, this one's going to be like a taste thing, I think, more than anything. I like the In Your House one better. And it's just because, to me, it was a meaner match. Like, there was a babyface and a heel. That first one, it was kind of like they're tearing the family apart by feuding over this belt. It wasn't like a nasty feud like that other one was. And I like the blood and all that stuff. And that's also the one, too, I don't know if you remember this or not, where Brett was doing the Irish whips into the corner of Davey Boy, where Davey Boy would just flip and bounce off the turnbuckle. And the In Your House one's the one where he bounces off the turnbuckle and literally lands directly on top of his head.
On his head, I remember that, yep.
And it's amazing that he didn't get hurt or die, let alone fight another probably 20 minutes, because that match is really long. And just off the top of my head, I would have zero problem calling that the best match maybe ever in Your House history.
Yeah, it's a great one. And now I'm adding that to the list, hey, Ed, because once again, I haven't watched those in a while and I want to compare them. So I'm going to do some comparisons here. But I'd love to relive that.
Curious to see what you would think, like after the comparison, to see which one you picked or the reasons why you would pick one over the other.
I'll have to do that.
But number 2, the Jay, what do you got here?
So number 2, I mean, this is tough, 2 and 1. So I just got real personal. I've said on some of our other list shows, sometimes you just got to go with your gut. And I kind of wanted to go with a really good, almost like for me, dream match that was just a straight up barn burning wrestling match, technically, and with the things they do, the storytelling and everything. And It's from about 5 years ago. I went with a match we thought we might not have ever seen before things kind of changed. And that was AJ versus John Cena at SummerSlam 16.
That's a good match. Honestly, I probably haven't watched it since it happened. So that's probably why
I've watched it a few times.
That match probably wasn't even on my mind when I did this list, to be honest with you. And that might even be my fault. I do remember it being good, but I don't remember it super well. That's not... Who's champion in that match?
See, that's the thing. Styles won. Clean.
Oh, that's the one where he beats him, and then
he beats him. It wasn't for a belt.
Oh, okay. So he already beat him for the belt, correct?
I think no, not yet. So this is what pretty much elevated Styles in the WWE to again be another one of the guys from like kind of mid card IC programs to the breaking the glass ceiling of the main event picture and the world title.
Okay, because that's when he was doing the whole, like, nothing else to do except for, like, got to go to the gym, got to get something to eat, got to beat John Cena.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's, like, because he beats him
I think
so
it was just a few months later after SummerSlam where, Vince promoted AJ to the main event picture.
Okay. Yeah, and that's worked out pretty well for him since, considering, AJ's not in the main event picture right now, but he's still tag team champion on Raw. And he's been tag team champion since Mania. So, still doing something right. That's for sure. All right, Jay, this is the coup de grace, el numero uno, as Arnold would say.
Well, I'm sorry, what was your 2, Heo?
2 was Bret and Bulldog.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because we had already picked it. Okay.
And number 1 is one that we already spoke about. This is the original TLC from SummerSlam 2000. Now, this is... Okay. And this is why I didn't talk about it when you brought it up already. This was a match that we didn't... Like, going into it, we just figured it'd be like a decent match. We had no fucking idea.
That's a great call. That's what makes it.
Yeah, it was a total surprise to us. And the fact that they've had numerous matches like this between these 3 teams is pretty amazing. It's kind of a bummer that they were so brutal that we couldn't get like a final send-off one. But I fully understand the reason why. Never had a problem with them not doing it. But like they got in some trouble for this match. This was like the same thing we said about Mick Foley with the King of the Rings stunt. And like, Vince was like, that was an amazing match. You guys did a hell of a job. But like, you're never doing that again. And then they did it 3 more times to the point where even Edge was kind of like, I remember during the 3rd one, Edge was kind of like, this is it. Like, I'm not doing these anymore. We're done after this. Like, because everyone knew that those 3 matches, is it 3? Wasn't it 3?
It was 3, and they also did it wasn't involving these 3 teams, but do you remember they did that impromptu TLC on a SmackDown?
I do remember
with a
that.
bunch of different teams. Like, even Kane was in it, and like the guys there were like, dude, like Vince just sits us down like, yeah, you're doing TLC tonight on TV. They're like, what?
And if I remember correctly, maybe that's what I read at the time. Edge might have been hurt or something like that. He was out. And he did an interview or something where he was like, man, I know, like he was saying that like he feels partially responsible because he knows how bad the match was for his career and physicality, and the same could be said for every one of those guys. That it was something that they started. And B, he's like, dude, they got these fucking guys doing them on SmackDown. Like, that is just inherently wrong. Yeah. And that might be the only one they ever really did like that. They've had ladder matches and shit, but an actual TLC match, unless they build it up as like, they were doing it on Raw instead of a pay-per-view on purpose for, like the Raw 200th episode thing with a TLC. But like, other than that, like they never like really hot-shotted a TLC match onto TV. Thankfully,
no, they're so dangerous. Yeah, and like you mentioned, SummerSlam 2000, as we're talking about, was the first one. Then they did WrestleMania 2000 that same year, TLC, and then WrestleMania 17, which arguably might be the best of them.
Oh no, then the WrestleMania one would have been the first one then, because Mania is before SummerSlam.
That's true. Yeah, I wasn't thinking that. So there you go.
So this was the only one that wasn't at WrestleMania.
Was WrestleMania 2000 dubbed as TLC, though?
I think so.
I'm looking that up.
Because it had to be. It was a ladder match, the whole deal. Like, they had the ladders hanging, or the belts hanging and shit.
Yeah,
I don't think that they ever did a match between those 3 teams that wasn't for the championship.
No, see, officially here, so I wanted to fact check. The WrestleMania 2000 match was dubbed a triangle ladder match. It was the precursor to TLC.
So, okay, now here's the question. So, is there 3 TLC matches and that match, or do they just call that match TLC now?
I think that's not considered TLC. The first TLC was the one we picked, SummerSlam 2000.
So then there would be 3 TLC matches between these teams, and then that WrestleMania triangle ladder match. Okay, that's weird. Now that makes me want to go and watch all 4 of them and see what's what, because something here is not computing to me. But I'm not saying that anybody's wrong. I'm saying that like my memory sucks, so I kind of want to go and watch them.
Because I was going to say I think it was only 2 TLC matches then with this triangle ladder match, because it was WrestleMania
so there was
2000
never 3
triangle ladder match. Then it was the first ever TLC, SummerSlam 2000, and then WrestleMania 17 was the final one. So they only did 2 official TLCs between the Hardys, Dudleys, and Edge and Christian.
And I don't remember which one I think is the best. I have a funny feeling it's the WrestleMania 17
That's
one.
what I always remembered thinking was the best.
But I might just be thinking because of how hot that crowd was. Like, I might need to go back and see. We go back and do a list like this, and now I got 17 hours of wrestling.
I like it. Yeah, I'm down.
And it's the worst kind. It's the personal curiosity. Like, I don't have to watch it for the show or any reason other than myself. So I'm like, cool. Now I have to somehow work this into my normal array of stuff.
And with the nickname we gave the new network, I got to watch what I say, because I was seriously about to say I got to jump on the cock.
The cack.
I got to jump on some cock.
But we are not done yet here, the Jay. We have still yet to get to your number 1 choice. What is your favorite match in SummerSlam history, loosely? So
you know me all too well, Hate Ya, and like I mentioned, going with my gut and going with a match that it's another one that I never thought I'd see at certain points. I still remember to this day, I watched this at Hooters at State College, where I watched a hell of a lot of pay-per-views, and because it was the easiest way for a college kid to see them. And that was SummerSlam 2002, the return and comeback of Shawn Michaels as he battled Triple H in a street fight for a moment, I just had to put that on as my number one. Because
that is,
Shawn Michaels is like my favorite wrestler of all time. For those listening that might not know,
that's on here. Like, I do have a list of stuff too that like the honorable mention stuff, and that's on here. So I understand why. I mean, dude, I remember we were very surprised when Shawn Michaels won. We just didn't think that was going to happen because Trips was like the last guy you were beating in 2002. Let's just be honest.
Right.
Exactly. But yeah, it is a good match, though. It's really good. It's been a while, once again, since I've watched it. So, I should probably go back and rewatch that one sometime here, too.
Yeah, great list. Hey, now, do you want to throw out some honorable mentions just to wrap up our SummerSlam celebration?
Yeah, I have a few more on here. I have Edge versus Cena in 2006.
Yep, that's a great one.
Punk versus Hardy in a TLC match from 2009
I love that
for the
match.
world title.
Yep, I had that.
I have Brock versus Punk from 2013, which we mentioned. The HBK street fight you just mentioned. Rock versus Brock, which we already talked about. I have three more. I have Brett and Taker from SummerSlam 97. It's a pretty good match. HBK versus Vader, just because even though there's some goofiness in there, I still think there's some good shit there too. And I had to throw this on here because I didn't really care for this at first, but through the years I've come to really like it. The Mankind Undertaker Boiler Room.
Yeah, that kind of grew on us over the years. I remember talking about that, and at the time, we always said when we talk about other modern pay-per-views and the invention, if you will, of the cinematic match and not being big on it, like these were kind of the precursors to that. We just
absolutely
wanted our wrestling as wrestling nerds. So like those kind of matches we were like not into, but then you get older, you kind of see different sides of it, different perspective, and you're like, it's not bad actually the way they did that.
I feel like we used to just get pissed off anytime they weren't fucking in a ring. Like, we want to watch wrestling, god damn it. Like, we were more old fuddy-duddy back then than we are now. We're like, I understand why, this is the point in the feud where they needed to do something like that. And, of course, they did the Paul Bearer turn and the whole deal and all that. So it was a big deal. They'd never really done anything like that. I still remember how nuts it was to get the shot during the match of them showing the arena, and they didn't, for some reason, have this on big screen. They had fucking televisions wheeled out like they were, like when you watched a movie in school and they had the TV on the stand. I'm like, the fuck? They got like little TV stands. Like if you're in like the C section, it's like, what am I doing here? I might as well go home. But yeah, on TV it was good for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, some of mine, I had the WWE Undisputed Championship, CM Punk and Cena from 2011. That wasn't as good as their, one of my favorite matches of all time is the Money in the Bank, just because of the circumstances around it in Chicago.
Yep, that's amazing.
This was a good one. The rise of Seth Rollins back in 2015 when he was coming up, Seth Rollins versus Cena, SummerSlam 15.
That was good. That was one that I kind of like brought up and was like, and honestly, if I would have rewatched it before I did my list, it's very possible it would have ended up on there. You know it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we pretty much covered it, man. That was the end of my notes and list. So, even with the honorable mentions. So, good SummerSlam talk, hey, yo.
Absolutely, the J. So, that's it, guys. We hope you enjoyed the What's Real Summer Vacation Special Part 1. And guess what? That means there's going to be a Part 2 next week. So, don't forget to join us for that as well. But that's it for us, guys. Hey Ed Demko, and this is the J. Jared Vajoris, and this has been the What's Real Podcast Summer Vacation Special. See you guys next time.
Yeah.
What's real?